Welcome back to News Talk. A lot of burgundy and gold-clad fans left FedEx Field in Landover bummed out that their team's first-half lead against the Green Bay Packers didn't hold up. Despite the 35-18 loss, most fans do seem happy by the club's success this season and very optimistic about the future. Joining us now to talk about the game and where Jay Gruden's squad goes from here, Tom Threlkeld, editor-in-chief of the DC Pro Sports Report, and Jerry Brewer, columnist for the Washington Post. Thank you both for coming in. Great having both of you here. Tom, it was exciting to see this upstart club, the surprise winner of the NFC East, Washington, take a first-half lead against a Green Bay team that had clearly struggled down the stretch. Why didn't the lead hold up? What happened to cause the outcome that we had?
Well, for starters, Washington left some points out there on the field when they had a perfect crossing pattern to DeSean Jackson should have scored a touchdown. He didn't extend the ball. Maybe he was afraid it would be poked out away or something. And then they had a couple of shots from, the 1 yard line or inside, didn't get anything.
They had first and
goal from inside the one.
From inside the one.
And couldn't score, and that was 4 points lost there. They also missed an extra point, so that's 5 points lost there in the first half. And then, after, really, I think he was 1 for 8 for 11 yards in the first quarter, Aaron Rodgers. Then he really caught fire. He started hurrying up the offense. He caught Washington with too many men on the field a couple of times, and he's preventing them from substituting. And I think he went 14 for 20 and threw 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. That's the Aaron Rodgers that the league is used to seeing. He came back after that initial sack where Preston Smith got him for a safety. Washington had very little pass rush against Green Bay, and if you don't rush the passer against Green Bay, that's a real problem. That is the recipe, not for Aaron Rodgers, but for any great quarterback, is to put pressure on him. They didn't, and he started dicing them up.
Jerry Brewer, Aaron Rodgers did not have a great year by Aaron Rodgers standards, but he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he's got a lot of playoff experience. He clearly got in gear during the course of this game, and I was surprised by the Green Bay running game. I wasn't expecting them to have as much success as they did on the ground.
Yeah, in the second half, they had 124 of their 141 rushing yards, and I think, Rodgers speeding up the tempo, really changing the dynamic of the game in the second quarter, left the Redskins defense gassed, quite honestly, and they missed a lot of tackles. This isn't a good Redskins tackling team, but even by their standards, they were weak efforts at tackling, and that really just, from that point on, you knew they were in real trouble. And then on the other side of it, their pass protection was as bad as it had been all season. Green Bay was able to dial up some things, do some really clever things. They're a little bit different when you have Clay Matthews as a middle linebacker and then moving all around. And I think they didn't do a good enough job accounting for some of the heat they could bring. 6 sacks Kirk Cousins suffered. They weren't able to get the ball down the field to DeSean Jackson, and that was a big difference in the game.
Tom mentioned the play where DeSean Jackson catches the crossing pass over the middle, heads for the pylon, seems to cut across the end zone airspace, but has the ball in his right hand, so the ball didn't cross the plane. That by itself, one can understand why his instinct there is to protect the football from being knocked away. That by itself doesn't have to be a backbreaker because it's first and goal from the half-yard line. But when they can't then get in from half a yard, did you sense a momentum shift?
Oh, absolutely. You're there at the half-yard line, and you go power. And this is one thing this team wanted to do at the start of the year that never materialized outside of a couple of games. But they went power. They gave the ball to Alfred Morris. You're talking about a heavy defensive front versus your best blockers on offense. Alfred Morris ran the ball twice, lost a yard. And then you go on third down, you get a delay of game penalty at the worst possible time. Then it's 3rd and goal from the 7. You don't get in. I think that's when everything changed. And that's one of the Achilles heel of this team, is that they weren't able to take advantage of opportunities. They squandered so much. If you get that game to 16-0 instead of 11-0, I think that changes some of the things that you can do. Aaron Rodgers is a little more uncomfortable.
Tom?
Yeah, look, I thought that sequence was sort of emblematic of the problems Washington had on offense this year. And that is, when they, as Jerry said, when they came into the season, Jay Gruden was saying, we're going to be a power rushing team. We're going to run the football first and foremost. A lot of that had to do with the fact that they had Kirk Cousins, an unproven starter at quarterback, and they wanted to run the ball 35 times and let him sort of make the plays in the passing game where they existed rather than putting the game on his shoulders. But as we saw, in order to win 9 games and the division this year, they had to put the offense on Kirk Cousins' shoulders. They had to say, you're the offense, because they couldn't run the ball. Week after week, we saw Washington averaging, with Alfred Morris, the guy who set records as a rookie running back just a few years ago, averaging 2.5 yards a carry, 2 yards a carry, under 3 yards a carry, week after week. And here they were, less than 3 feet to go to score a touchdown, and they couldn't do it. It's not all Alfred's fault. I thought Alfred had a down year. But there are real problems with blocking, particularly on the left side of that line, at the center and left.
Talk about the evolution of Kirk Cousins over the course of his first full year as starting quarterback for an NFL team. Some really, really impressive numbers during that long stretch when Washington was on.
Yeah, he started off pretty slowly. He threw two picks in the season opener, but those are the last interceptions he threw at home all year, including yesterday. So he sort of seemed to conquer the one problem that has really plagued him prior to this season, which was, I think it was 1 turnover every 29 snaps, which is really an unacceptable level.
And then the perception that he would get into a funk or
right. And you saw some of that yesterday, where he started forcing the ball, and he had a couple of passes that could have gone the other way, but that's something quarterbacks will do when they're desperate. This season, he was a much smarter quarterback, but you can see he's a rhythm quarterback. When he gets into a good rhythm, when he starts feeling well, when he has early success, it really sets the tone for the rest of the game, which is why they come out and frequently, and you saw again yesterday, a quick 3-yard pass to Jordan Reed. What's the point of a 3-yard pass to Jordan Reed? Just to get him to complete a pass, to get him going, to get him feeling good, because when he gets into that rhythm, he's a different quarterback.
It's kind of a feel thing, this notion of Kirk Cousins. It's a little subjective, but I get completely, Jerry, what Tom is saying, because in the first half, just the way he was moving, his decision-making, everything about his play was pretty high level.
Yeah, it absolutely was, and that's when you go and you say, what's the defining aspect of this season? I think it's not only just the rise of Kirk Cousins, but it's the depth of the understanding between the coaching staff and Kirk Cousins. Who is Kirk Cousins and how do we get the best out of him? And now Kirk Cousins has some confidence to build upon. Now that the Redskins are more of a feared team, more of a known commodity, they're going to encounter some things moving forward where defenses are a little more prepared for what they're able to do. I mean, this was a team that just slowly developed over the course of the year, and all of a sudden Deshaun Jackson comes back, all their weapons are healthy. Now the rest of the NFL didn't understand exactly what they could do. They're going to understand next year, and so Cousins has to take all this confidence that he gained. And for him to be able to not have his best performance and still wind up with 329 passing yards and no turnovers, that's a nice first playoff performance. We saw this weekend how difficult it could be for first-time starters, even at home. So he's got a lot that he can build upon, and we'll see where he goes. Now he has to develop a resolve that is permanent, so that the next time he has a game where he throws 2 or 3 interceptions, there is no funk, there is no setback for 2 or 3 weeks.
We have 2 minutes left in this segment. Let's talk about the team as a whole. If there was a club in the NFL this year that overachieved more than Washington, maybe Kansas City, particularly with Kansas City's slow start, getting hot, making the playoffs, and they're still alive. But I think the point stands. Everyone had Washington 30, 31, 32. Yeah. They weren't even in the conversation for the playoffs 6-7 weeks out. What does this club take into 2016?
Well, I think you see a team that is ahead of schedule. They were not supposed to be good this year. The management didn't expect them to be very good this year. Just looking at the talent on the roster, they overachieved, and I think the major reason was the quarterback play was much higher than they expected it to be, at a much higher level. But you saw in that game where there are clearly areas where they need to improve. They need to really get a running game going. Kirk Cousins, as well as he played this year, is not a guy who is going to win 10, 12 games a year without a running game. They need to do a much better job there. Also, you saw the effect that injuries had on their secondary. They either need to get healthy in the secondary or bring in some help. They'll have some decisions to make with Deshaun Goldson and a very high cap number at I think it's like $8 million next year. And also along the defensive line. Jason Hatcher was talking like he might retire next year. He's also got a high cap number. So, I mean, we'll see. You know, if they ask him to take a pay cut, he may decide he doesn't want to do it. So they have some areas to improve. They're still rebuilding. That's the thing. You can't look at this team and say 9-7. They're not a rebuilding team. They are a rebuilding team.
We'll take a break here. More of our conversation with Tom Threlkeld and Jerry Brewer straight ahead. Those of you watching After Dark can go online and pick up another segment of our Q&A there. It's news8newstalk.com. A break. Back with more in a moment.